Yo, what's going on? Hope you're doing well. It's been a great start to the sort of fall, winter season of riding here in southern Utah, spending a whole bunch of time on the blue downhill bike, having so much fun riding out at the Rampage sites, as you may have seen in some of the POV videos and things like that. But to be honest, I've sort of been neglecting a bit of maintenance on this bike, just been having a little too much fun riding, and it's making some crazy noises. Personally, I really like riding a super quiet bike, so today we're gonna be breaking down my top 5 ways that you can keep your mountain bike running silent. So let's get into it. To start things off here, my first piece of advice to keep your bike running silent is to keep it clean. Washing your bike's a really good habit to be in for many reasons, but my biggest thing is I really like to use the opportunity when washing the bike to do some drop tests with it clean, try to identify any unwanted sounds, and then come back into the shop with a clean bike and start turning wrenches from there and figuring out those issues. Additionally, it's a really good opportunity when you're wiping your bike down to check out your fork seals, check out just some main areas, maybe shake the back wheel, see if there's any play, anything's loose, and just try to find any catastrophic issues before they become an issue out on the trail. Additionally, who doesn't like riding a clean bike? I know I do. It's just a good little extra confidence boost when you're loading up the truck to go riding. So this bike has not been washed in about 2-3 rides, so we're gonna hop outside, get it cleaned up, and go from there. Bike is all clean now. It was super windy out there, but we got the job done, which is sweet. And when balancing the bike afterwards, I didn't find anything too catastrophic going on, but I did find a lot of noise coming from my drivetrain. And this leads me perfectly into my second piece of advice on how to keep your bike running silent, and that is to lube your chain. Lubing your chain is great, obviously, for shifting performance, but it's also a great way to keep your drivetrain nice and quiet. A dry chain tends to create a slight rattle noise from the back of your bike, and lubing it will fix just that. Here we are at the back of the bike. We've got the Shimano Saint 10-speed drivetrain on this bike, and to lube this drivetrain, I do it the same across all my bikes, e-bike, trail bike, downhill bike. We're gonna grab a rag, we're gonna wipe this chain down first to give us a nice good starting point, and then we're gonna come up to the cassette here, and I like to lube just the rollers. So here you can see you got the roller, and then you got this outer link plate. All we need is chain lube on the roller, not on the link plate. When you have excess chain lube on the link, what happens is that's going to attract excess dirt from the trail into your drivetrain system. It's gonna cause everything to wear faster just because there's extra grit in there. And it's also just gonna lead you to more noise from the drivetrain, which is what we're trying to prevent here, of course. So we're gonna lube it all up, just the rollers. We're gonna shift a little bit, and then we're gonna come back in with that same rag and wipe down the outside of the chain to get rid of any of that excess lube. And then we'll be set and ready, dialed in for the next ride. With the chain all lubed up now, I just wanted to quickly discuss why I personally shift the bike after lubing the chain. So for me, I've always done this growing up, so it's a bit of a creature of habit thing. However, the reason I do it is to try to work the lube deeper into the roller and just get the chain working as best I think it can. However, there are some people who would disagree with doing it this way, and they prefer to just pedal the bike straight with no shifting, given to the fact that if you were to apply too much lube onto the chain and then shift it, you're gonna spread that lube all over the cassette, and it's just gonna attract more dust, debris, all sorts of stuff you don't want into your drivetrain. It's gonna cause, all sorts of wear and noise and the things we're trying to prevent right now. So I just wanted to cover that up. There's kind of 2 ways you could do it, and before moving on to our third step here. So part 3 of this is going to be to make sure your brakes are not rubbing. While doing that whole thing and spinning the wheel backwards like that, I ended up finding that my brake was rubbing pretty bad. This was likely caused due to the fact that with this bike, I have it on my back and we're hiking, big ridges out of the Rampage site, and then just plopping the bike up on top of a little climb or something, and that we have to sort of rock climb up. And I assume it got smashed by a rock and started rubbing. So the reason that this is an issue is obviously it causes noise in the stand. A lot of the time though, with a slight rub, you're not gonna notice it over your hub sound. So it's really important to make sure that you're spinning the wheel backwards so your hub actually isn't clicking, so you can identify it more clearly. It's really important to make sure that this isn't happening in the stand, because when you go riding and you start on a downhill, your brakes heat up and the fluid inside will expand a little bit, causing your pads to come closer together and the rub to get worse. So it's really important to get this one right. Personally, I really don't like working on my brakes, but let's grab a tool from the toolbox and fix this up. Over at the toolbox now, we're gonna plop down into layer 2, and this is what we need. This just came with a kit that I got when I was younger. It's a little feedback rotor truing tool. You can kind of use this side to get some bigger ones out. This side, more of a fine adjustment. Personally, kind of only use this side. And yeah, this is gonna get the job done. This is not my favorite project of all the things to do on a bike, but yeah, we're gonna get it sorted. You can do this just in the stand, with the back wheel mounted on, or if you're in a bike shop, a great way to do this is many of the wheel truing stands actually have a little rotor truing attachment, which is the best way to do this. But for now, we're just gonna spin this wheel backwards so we can't hear the hub sound, and make these small adjustments as needed until this stops rubbing. There you have it, a couple minutes working on this rear brake here with the rotor truing tool, just kind of spinning the wheel forwards, backwards, making small adjustments until it's right, and we have a brake that's no longer rubbing. So super stoked on that. One pretty solid piece of advice that I didn't mention for that job beforehand is every time you make an adjustment, it's really important to tap your brake, once, twice, 3 times, whatever makes you feel good. The reason you're gonna do that is in order to recenter your brake pads. There's nothing worse than spending 15, 20 minutes trying to get your rotor not to rub, which is a bit of a painstaking process at times, just to pull your brake and realize you've made basically no progress. So make sure with each adjustment that you make with the rotor truing tool to tap your brake, adjust those pads, and make sure you're just doing the job right, and you'll be a happy camper at the end of the day. We're making some good progress now with that brake no longer rubbing, so let's move on to the 4th piece of advice that I've got for you today, and that is to look into your frame protection. We're not just talking about chain slap protection here, we really need to dive deeper into the bike and find all the possible ways that your bike could be creating some rattles and unwanted noises. So checking out the frame protection now, although we're gonna dive deeper than just the chain slap protection, that is where we're gonna start. If you don't have your chain slap protection dialed in, you're gonna be riding a noisy bike. Basically what you're looking for is some great coverage with something that will reduce noise between the chain and the frame. So in this case, YT's got this really rad rubber protection, top and bottom up here as well. And that's really what you're looking for. Thankfully, straight from the factory, this bike is running nice and quiet. But if your bike is loud and you're looking to add some extra protection to your frame, you can check out just some 3M mastic tape, good product to have in the garage. And all it is basically this rubber tape that YT has custom made for their frame. So, super simple product and great to have in the garage. Getting more specific now, we're gonna check out where cables enter and exit your frame. So naturally, a bike frame is typically aluminum or carbon, and a shifting housing is a pretty hard material, as well as a brake line like over there. So what you really need to do is limit the contact between these 2 points, and what YT has done is made these rubber grommets, which are a super great solution to this problem, because if the shifting housing and the frame are coming in contact, you're gonna have a pretty solid rattle that's gonna make your bike not silent. So what you can do if you do not have those rubber grommets is pick up a roll of electrical shrink wrap here and just a cheap heat gun, or you can just use a lighter, which I don't recommend, but the heat gun's pretty dialed. And you can cut a piece, about 1 inch or 2 of that shrink wrap, and you can just mark right on this, cable here where you need it. You can undo your shifting situation, slide it on, apply it with the heat gun, and then slide it back in, and that's going to be a really concrete way to limit any of that slap between your shifting, brake line, whatever it may be, and your frame, and it's going to keep your bike running nice and happy. Next up is to check out your shift and brake line up at your cockpit. It's a really great idea to run a cool little clip. You can either use a zip tie. Some people even do shrink wrap between these 2 cables as well if you want to be super fancy. YTs come with these clips, so I just use those. And what that's going to do is when you're riding down the trail, the bike is rattling around, it's not going to allow these cables to hit each other and generate noise up at the front of your bike. So wrapping things up here, we're gonna take a look at my brakes. These are the 4-piston Saints from Shimano. Got the cooling fins. It's a really great product, super strong, and the cooling fins do a great job of dissipating heat. However, one thing that does happen is the cooling fin can come in contact a bit with the caliper and make a bit of a rattle. So what I've done is just add a little bit of mastic tape on the caliper there just to prevent that contact. Although that's a very specific example that maybe 1% of you may be able to relate to, the moral of that story is with identifying noises on your mountain bike and trying to keep it running silent, aside from the big issues such as the chain slap, brakes rubbing, things like that, you really need to just be meticulous, find any area where two hard materials may be coming in contact and find a way to limit it, and that is the key to running a really quiet bike. To finish things off here, my 5th and final piece of advice that I've got for you today on how to keep your bike running nice and quiet is to make sure that your linkage bolts are torqued to spec. This is super important because one loose bolt will cause a lot of play in your linkage and back end of your bike, and that's just gonna generate a lot of noise. In some cases, if it's getting real bad, you can feel it in your feet when you're riding just because it's all moving around, not how it's supposed to be. So we're gonna grab the torque wrench out and see how mine are doing. After digging in with the torque wrench there, ended up not finding anything too crazy, which is a good thing. Just got a bit of a turn on one of the bolts. So after all we've done today, this bike is gonna be ripping this week. Super stoked to get out in the desert, hit some jumps, drops, etc. Really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for watching this week's video. Thanks for the support. I hope you learned a thing or two. And if you have any tips that you do on your bikes to keep them nice and quiet and dialed in that maybe I missed, please drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.